Hard in a blender, watch it spin around to a beautiful oblivion. Rendezvous and I'm through with you. Oh, yeah, right? Just like that, we're back at this thing Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern time. What else you got going on? Hey, come on in, put on the X. It's the BCX, it's the Campbell's Rambles, and it is Wednesday, May 28th of the 25s. My name is Brian Campbell, the proprietor of this here YouTube channel, hoping to spread a little bit of some fresh cut joy coming your way. Okay, big week, get fired up, big day for the next 2 hours. I will be speaking long-winded opinions on things like combat sports, 70s vinyl, 90s NBA, mental health, whatever you got, gas station food, whatever is on my plate and your mind, okay? I'll be spinning those stories in long-winded circles, and hopefully you'll get your questions answered. So welcome on in, all right? Let's go. Come on. Can we give anyone feeling what I'm feeling right now? A cup of AG1 to the working men out there, all right? Yeah. All right. All right. All right. Thank you for playing today. Already lazy bed trying to get up inside on me. Look at that butterscotch brown just for men shining bright. I wish I could deny that, lazy, but I can't. We tell the truth on this podcast the best that we know how. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be the best 2 hours of your day without question. All right, I guarantee that. So 2 drink minimum, smoke them if you got them, tip your waitresses on the way out there. This is one middle-aged man in his basement dealing with life. Okay, one question at a time, right along with you. So hopefully you've been rocking out on some Creed. All right, I mean, if you go that way, right? Like it has been like sunny out in springtime. I mean, look, it's time to get out of our comfort zones. All right, let's go. Let's enjoy it. Let's live. All right, let them live, let them work. That's what we're talking about right there. All right, all right. Antonio Monzo already at it. BC, how you are, Brian? How are you going to let MMA Centel get you? Yeah, apparently I got played a few times on Monday's MK show with news that wasn't fully news. But look, it's dead right now. Combat sports is dead. Anyone else feeling what I'm feeling? Combat sports like scary dead right now. Okay, not completely, not fully. This guy right here, this smile, getting on a jet plane tomorrow. Okay, heading over there to Sin City for a little bit of PBC on Prime Video. All right, get fired up. Get fired up about that. Okay. All right. Green stuff everywhere. Thank you, Sup Donk, Sup Green Bandana, Dixon Cider, everyone's goal. BC is drinking the green stuff that was found inside the Arachnids and Starship Troopers. One of my least favorite movie scenes of all time. Thank you very much. Thank you. This ain't even real AG1. This is like bootleg packets of AG1 that my family accidentally bought, thinking it was one of those like hydration packets. Turns out it was like thick green bootleg AG1, like AG1 half. You know what I'm saying? But I'll still take it down. All right, because I like it. I like being healthy. All right, there we go. There it is. Sometimes I like being healthy. So yeah, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to talk. I'm going to speak my piece on a few topics. I'm going to throw the dance floor open to any of you. Okay. We'll get your questions handled. The super chat is open. You can play. Thank you for supporting the podcast. If that's the way you like to do it, there's no mandatory though. There's no mandatory payments. Okay. Pay with your time and your interest and your energy. All right. Hope all you regulars are doing well out there in both the MK extended universe, the main card minute universe with the one and only Luke Nocita, who I see is already here as well. One of my favorites and yours. And of course, Luke Thomas over there on Substack. Get after that. New in the BCX, we got a really good interview with Keyshawn Davis, the businessman, as we are a little more than a week out from what I consider to be the most difficult test of that young great champion's career when he takes on Edwin De Los Santos, the hard-hitting southpaw, who, in a loss forced Shakur Stevenson into a CompuBox low amount of punches attempted and landed, but I think it's gonna be a real test. And check out my interview with him. Keyshawn does not believe this will be a real test. In fact, he believes he's gonna walk through that dangerous fella and knock him the hell out. So always great to talk to the businessman because he don't hold back anything. He absolutely wants all the smoke. He wants all the smoke like those. Have you seen the shit videos of like the weed backpacks where you're like, you got the headpiece on and you're like, okay, this is going to, as Luke Thomas would say, this is going to kill me, but I'm signing up for it. There we go. Thank you. Harman Sarai, thank you for checking out the interview. Also, Eddie Hearn, if you missed that on my channel, check that out. Trying to do some things here. All right, just a little bit. MK News and Notes. We'll be back, of course, Friday. You already knew that. I'll be on the road in Vegas, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So check out that episode as we set the stage for this weekend's box UFC. Okay. Just to speak a little bit more broadly, if you will, we've got women in the main event on Saturday, and I'm fired up for it. All right. So we're going to get into that. Also, big merch announcement on Monday. So get your pocketbooks ready. Okay. Yeah. People like Saul, the finest gutter ball cleaner this side of Louisville, is like, yo, where's the merch? It's here. It's finally here. Big thanks to Long Island Luke, Average Joe Art. We're gonna hear a lot in the future about these plans, but they're coming. Okay, they're coming on. I mean, if you're coming on, you know what. I mean, there's no Sheeta knows. All right, get those man purses out. Get those Italian leather shoulder bags like Luke Thomas wore that time to that Indians game in documentary number 5. Am I the only one that remembers our history here? All right. I hope that you guys are fighting the good fight out there. Okay, keep your head up. Forgive, but don't forget. Girl, keep your head up. I would say it like that, like Tupac did. If there were any girls in this chat, we all know that's untrue. So, however you're representing yourself, keep your head up. Okay, let's get after it. Who can forget Harmon? All those great documentaries. I mean, the biggest lament, without question. Okay, the second biggest lament. All right, the third biggest lament, without question, that I have. Actually, the fourth. When we're talking about the end of Showtime Sports, right, in December of 2023, I got a lot of regrets, but one of them is that the budget to do these documentaries has expired. So unless I'm going to be paying old Jakey out of my pocket, I got to get that documentary number 9 off the cutting room floor. Yeah, it did follow us in London on our live show some couple years ago, and it did follow the behind the scenes of the impending Titanic doom that was coming our way with that iceberg. But many regrets and laments from the end of that era, but we do have to move forward. And we do have to, what do we got here from Brody Moret already? Brody gets spicy in these chats. BC, I haven't watched your Keyshawn interview yet, but I hope you asked him if he knocked out Teo's daddy. I did not ask him that, but we're going to talk Teo today. A lot of weird stuff going on. I want to be positive today about combat sports. Can't do it. Spoiler alert, right? No, things aren't dead. We're just in a rut. We're in a rut right now. Okay. It's kind of a lame period of boxing outside of, I'm excited for Caleb Plant, Jamal Charlo's fights this weekend that I'll be on the call for. I mentioned I'm real excited about Keyshawn's fight next week with Edwin De Los Santos there with the Top Rank ESPN deal, but June's pretty barren for a while in that regard. So hopefully our friends over there at UFC can blow our socks off with some big news. All right. Some big friggin' news. Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's about it for now. All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. All right. Let me get back on this green drink over here. All right. All right. Early question coming in from Jay. Well, I don't know. We let it slip through here. BC, have you ever been to a Comic Con? I have not. Would I? Maybe more of like one of those 90s con where it's like the cast of like Seventh Heaven are sitting there autographing things. I mean, the thing about those cons, right, is like it's just a bunch of waiting in line to then pay for autographs and pictures, kind of, right? Am I wrong on that? Right? I mean, I do like the idea of it. I do have certain niche feelings towards certain parts of entertainment and pop culture over the years that I would pop big for. Like, imagine if they put together like a Big East 90s basketball con reunion. I'd be showing up there in the front line, be like, is Boubacar Al here? All right, let me go. All right, well, let's find out. There we go. There we go. Never been to the gathering of the Juggalos either, Lazy Bed. I like to keep a lot of parts of my life pure. And I don't think I need to go there with Fago and Rafe Bartholomew. All right. All right. That's all I got for on that one. It's going to be time to get into my topic. So let's kick that off there. Hope you enjoyed, of course, that fantastic intro that led you into this chat. How about Anthony Weller of the band Head Change on guitar, writing that tune, putting it together? It was told to me that little original jingle that kicks off the BCX live ramble is going to one day appear on their album. Okay, so let's go. It started right here. All right, started from the bottom. Still looking up, but one day we'll be there. All right, one day we will be there. Okay. Let's go off the top here. And then I only have 2 hours to say, so I'm going to get into your questions quicker. And I know you don't want to hear me ad nauseum, like just round up all the things that I'm upset about UFC at the moment, or just annoyed about how we just, continue to hear crickets about everything from their, impending signing, it would seem, of a new broadcast deal to the other matters we still kind of really need clarity about. Like Jones Aspinall, like, hey, are you guys still working with Turkey and looking to take a triple monopoly over with boxing as well? Or are the rumors true that things fell apart there? The one good thing, if it's a good thing because it didn't turn into a really bad thing, and that makes it a good thing, Tom Aspinall's really lame announcement today, which, rightfully so, a lot of people predicted based on recent history. Remember when John Jones had like a similar announcement a couple months ago? We're like, he's going to announce the fight. And then it's like, yo, I'm working with some crypto shit coins. Okay, great. Sure. Good luck to you there. How's the pool with the Dagestan man? I mean, John's having a great time in Thailand. All right. We cannot take that away from him. But no, Tom did not announce the fight. Tom would say afterwards, I told all you guys, I don't announce my fights, right? UFC does. Okay. Well, they don't announce fights either if they don't want to. And this is just, I mean, it's so damn shameless that they have not stripped him yet, or John meaning, or that they have not come to a conclusion about this. If there's silver lining and hope, it would mean that, when we're waiting for Mayweather Pacquiao to finally become official after all that crap, there were times where no news was very good news. Silence on the public front typically means there's a lot going on behind the scenes on the private front. But we aren't just waiting on, will this fight get made and when? It's so interconnected, in my opinion, loosely interconnected to what TKO wants to do in boxing with the existing UFC infrastructure, but much more deeper connected, of course, to where the UFC's TV deal is going to go. And I thought MMA Draw had a really good piece yesterday from a guest writer under a pseudonym who's well connected in the broadcast representation space, who really just went suitor by suitor and looked at the potential homes where UFC's broadcasting deal could center on, and what that likeliness is for each one, and how much that has changed, not just by the rumors of things falling apart with Netflix, the rumor that maybe the fallout of Turkey and Dana sitting down with Netflix, and maybe that led to a split, and maybe that hurts UFC's leverage moving forward. I just cannot believe that they are entering this season, this incredibly important season, meaning UFC and TKO, where they are looking to really like triple their broadcast revenue with a landmark deal. And of course, we already know they're aiming for 1 billion, right, per year. And just insane, right? Insane numbers. To do that when you're actively putting out an inferior product, and now, it's not just a couple people in different circles on the podcasting media space. Like, a lot of columns are being written. A lot of the fans are not, maybe not overly revolting. I mean, if UFC still puts out a card announcement with no fights on it, are they going to sell out in some new city? Probably. And they're still riding that momentum. But to play all these games that they are playing heading into these very important negotiations is just kind of wild to me, just kind of arrogant to me. I mean, no surprise in this TKO era, but wildly arrogant. If you remember leading into the sale in 2016, which was announced UFC 200 weekend in July, that the Fertitta Zuffa would be selling to Ari Emanuel, Endeavor, what do we call it back then? WMEIMG, whatever. What did Zuffa do leading into that? Put out their best shit by far week after week. Now, it was a gratuitously awesome era where, even Ronda's still lingering. Connor's on top. I mean, they got Brock back for 200. We all know how great that was. You remember UFC 200 week where you had 3 consecutive cards and 3 consecutive nights, all with title fights atop them. To see UFC limp into this very important season, to hear that maybe things didn't go that great with Netflix, to hear the rumors online that they are now going back to ESPN, who they sort of like, let that exclusive window expire because they didn't want to necessarily be there full time. I felt like in the beginning, we thought they want to be with either Netflix or Prime. And if they have got to use ESPN for part of that deal to get to the number they want, so be it. Now, if you believe the reports that you read, it feels like they're going back to ESPN, almost like, okay, we're gonna have to figure something out together here. The fact that this Jones Aspinall thing is just lingering over it and not being announced or finalized, is the silence a good thing that we're going to get this fight? Maybe, but how many people have you worn out? How much tolerance in people have you worn out ahead of then? And are you really holding this announcement until you have the new deal to kick off the new deal? Like, imagine, remember when they kicked off the Fox deal in 2011 by saying, we're going to put a pay-per-view main event on free TV. I remember it. We all remember it. It was the same night. It didn't go head to head. The timing was a little skewed here, where they started live on Fox earlier, but it was Pacquiao Marquez 3 on pay-per-view that night. And, we got the heavyweight championship, Junior Dos Santos knocking out Cain Velasquez in the first fight on free TV. So could I imagine, whether it is Netflix, whether it is Prime, whether it is whomever in the end, Fubo Sports for that matter, would they want to come out swinging big? I mean, imagine if they put live on Netflix, no pay-per-view upcharge, John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. I'm not saying that's their plan, but imagine if they did that. It'd be wild. It'd be great. It'd be exactly what you would want them to do, move big here. But it's like, does this whole year have to suffer, underneath that? I mean, and you can fight back on the BC. You can say, are we really suffering right now when we are getting some pretty damn good main events this summer? And we are. We ranked those on MK 2 episodes ago for a reason, because there is good news to talk about. But it's just wild to me. Yeah, I hear you, Justin Miller, right? But, where are you going to show up? Who's got the money? That's time to find out. Just the morale right now, the apathy. Does that matter? Does it matter if the media is upset or some fans are getting bored? What matters to them is this, and there's not enough negative movement to affect that. And again, maybe this is all them going at TKO land, yeah, we'll just punt this year. But our fans will understand when the new thing kicks off. Look, if the new thing kicks off and it's great and it's awesome, and maybe the amount of dates that they have to fill changes because of the desires of their new suitor, and maybe they've been holding back some great matchups, they're just going to launch at us. The return of Connor, Jones Aspinall, all these big things. At that point, will they get the last laugh and say, oh, you jaded, media members that spent, 9 months to 2 years complaining about this? Look where we are now. Well, did we really have to go 2 years? I mean, we just hit the 2-year anniversary today of when Mick Maynard, the matchmaker, put out those ill-advised tweets back then when they first got a little bit of that narrative of where's this matchmaking going? It seems like it's in the wrong direction. If you had asked me when was that Mick Maynard moment, I probably would have said a year ago, 9 months to a year ago. It was 2 years ago today. So it's not necessarily like, hey, just hang on, UFC fans, for the rest of this year and it's going to be great next year. Could it be when they kick off this new thing? Yeah, they could blow our socks off and they'll have the last laugh. But what are you sacrificing in between? Turning away fans. I mean, how many fans do I have to hear say, like, hey, if it wasn't for MK, I wouldn't watch UFC at all anymore. You guys and your complaining are keeping us, informed or what have you. If they weren't headed directly into this new season of a new broadcast deal, and they're in the midst of the negotiating right now, it's bad enough right now that I would say extreme things. I mean, I already feel like TKO's got to go. They've got to sell the UFC to get back the expectations that we used to expect of it being about the fights first, of the biggest matchups being made first and foremost. We are in the value extraction era, but only we are in it at this point in May of 2025, where it's like beyond shameless. I'm happy we did not get Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gahn once again announced today for an interim title. And if they had done that ridiculous move, they still could have been under the guise of, well, the winner's still going to fight John. John's just not ready yet. He's got a reality show. He's biding his time. But the risk, the arrogant risk they are taking by just letting this go, just not, all these heavyweights are speaking up. Like the division's held up. It's been held up for 2 years. They don't care because it's the TV deal and the government contracts, but it's the TV deal that is the backbone of their operation. So I guess we have to really wait and see to what the new TV deal is, what the amount is, what the setup is, right? Is it live on Netflix with no more pay-per-view? Is it split across different people? Is it, what is going to be the deal in this? Are we just going back to ESPN, or are they going to sign some temporary thing to extend ESPN while they continue to try to push for it? Either way, it's hard for me to sit here and have that confidence that if we just hang on a little bit longer as fans here, it's going to turn around in our good once the new thing is set up. Because they've shown us now for 2 years how much they don't actually care about fan satisfaction anymore. It's about identity. It's about, because of COVID, we haven't been in your city for years. So we're coming and we're jacking up the prices and we know you're going to pay it. I just don't remember this much apathy and low morale in the fan and media base ever. I remember 2012 being a rough year for UFC, where big main events were falling apart left and right. Then you had the John Jones, Dan Henderson, Chael Sonnen thing with UFC 152. And I remember thinking, okay, like they're hitting some speed bumps here after this huge rise. Look, this machine has been so great to get to this point right now. But I don't have to write any more columns or speak into this microphone anymore to convince you what I know in my heart. We got the wrong people running this. If you care about the sport itself, if you care about the fan enjoyment process, if you care about the evolution of the sport and growing new fan bases, these ain't the people. I'd like Dana White to be replaced. Daniel Alves jumping in. BC, is it time for Dana to go? What do you think? Yeah, I do think it's time. Not that he can't be used. Let's imagine a scenario where they're still going to be in boxing and they're still going to roll things out with Saudi pay. We don't know yet. We don't know if it's just not going to start with Canelo Crawford, but maybe it'll start next year in some other form. They need a TV deal, right? That's going to decide a lot of that. Even if you said there's a scenario in which Dana can still kind of be part-time in this world, but he's going to do slap and boxing and influential stuff. And now he's got a new Anheuser-Busch energy drink. Okay, cool. But if we could still use him in the roles where he actually makes sense, hyping fights, getting out, rolling up the sleeves and getting dirty and doing that job. He doesn't do that job anymore. And we're also finding out he doesn't really do the other jobs, the Hunter Campbell jobs behind the scenes of making the fights and really going to that. So I believe a huge positive change, including the relationship with the company and the media, which I do really believe Dana has led that for a couple, it's a long distance journey to get to where we are now. Do they need the media anymore? Blah, blah, blah. You can argue that all you want, but things were in a much better place, as I always say, when the promotion and the media were almost silent contracting with each other to say, we're fighting the same battle. We all want this sport to grow so that our enjoyment grows. If we work in this business, our financial foundation grows. If we are a super fan in this business, then the money I give is worth it and going to what we want. They've lost the plot. They've commercial beyond belief. And the next few moves will be ultra, ultra important to show me whether fans really need to start doing something extreme, like showing up outside UFC headquarters with picket signs going TKO must sell, because I'm really believing we're at that point. I follow pro wrestling more of the business side than the actual product these days, but I see the apathy of the WWE fans now, the anger of this TKO era and what it's done to so many things. This is what happens when you not just go corporate. I mean, everybody's goal ultimately is to go corporate, because that means you've made it. That means you've gotten to this other financial level, but there's a selling of your own soul in that process. And that's what we're in the midst of for UFC and WWE. And that's the TKO effect. And that's why I'm nervous about them making inroads in boxing. Something's got to change big. I just can't believe they're letting this much silence go without trying to jump in and correct the record or put a little goodwill out there or something. No one home. Knock on the door, call, email, no one home over there. We're not getting the answers we need. And it's a wild time considering how much it feels like they're fighting an uphill battle in these negotiations from what we hear to get the deal that they assumed they would get all along. But you reap what you sow in this game. And it hasn't been for a while about the things that actually matter to the health of the sport. It's been about how rich can Ari get. It's been about how much can their investors get paid back and their board members, it's been about stuff like that. So watch closely here, because I get nervous. This is my job. I get nervous that I can't remember a time where the sport has felt this irrelevant, which makes it even crazy because I'm saying irrelevant at a time when the money is just hand over fist. I mean, now we're selling UFC debut patches after they appear on each debuting fighter's trunks. They can't stop thinking of ways to market this, and that's all fine. Making money is a skill, but let's take care of the fighters. Let's take care of the fans. We've lost sight of both of those. It was okay if the fighters are getting screwed, but they're kind of allowing it, but at least the fans were happy. A lot of us dealt with that for a while. Now it's nobody's happy. So we'll see. All right. Biva, I wonder how much their obvious shift to the right has affected their brand with broadcasters. Look, that's why I have been outspoken in print on the microphone against their political turn, not because I'm completely against that side of the line. I mean, I've told you before, I'm a registered Republican. Am I down on Team MAGA? No, not necessarily. It's not my cup of tea this time, but that's just me. I float in the middle a lot anyway. I just don't want either side. To me, my personal stance, both sides are crazy. Both sides don't have the answers. Both sides are extremists. So if it was either side of this political line being shoved onto our screen and down our throats like this, like the same misgivings people had when the back of the end zone said Ed racism, right? I've got those same misgivings on the flip side too with what we're getting now. And I think it's an incredible risk to, well, look, let's be honest. Why did they do this? Did they do this only because Dana and Donald are long friends? No, they didn't do that only because of that. Are they friends? Was Dana in a key spot for the UFC 20-something years ago when they needed him? To a smaller degree than has been romanticized, yes, that's true. But this is a strategic TKO decision, knowing their intentions to get into boxing, knowing their want to take over a triple monopoly in combat sports, to take this thing through the roof. I mean, they're pretty ingenious in how they're doing it, going the political government contract route, something that I didn't even understand the premise of, until I started reading Zach Arnold's work on the MMA draw. But to go this hard into one side of the political line, you're automatically going to alienate your audience. Will this catch up with them in these broadcast negotiations? I mean, I don't know. Will it catch up with them dealing with Saudi the way they are? I don't know. The rumors that it might have in those Netflix negotiations, I don't know at the end of the day. But they've made some really arrogant risks in the pursuit of who their true customers are. Cities and countries that'll provide large site fees for them to go there, and the TV deal. The fan themselves, the people paying for the pay-per-views, the people paying for the tickets, they are long from being prioritized here. So, yeah. All right, that's it. No more. Okay. All right. What do we got? Alan W coming in here. Tell me about it, Alan W. Thank you, by the way, Alan W, as always, for your support of this show. And Alan doesn't always agree with me. This guy will get after it. All right. WWE flatline with their numbers. So that is the report that not flatline, but that the WWE taking Raw from USA, NBC, Universal, and putting it on Netflix, the ratings have gone down. And I think, obviously it was assumed that they would go through the roof because Netflix is the new, traditional primetime cable of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. That's been surprising. Alan goes on to say, in Netflix is cost-cutting mode and UFC is a fringe sport. Why the hell would they give UFC $1 billion when they can produce reality TV shows for less than $100 million? a season and draw 10x numbers. I mean, damn right, Alan. Right on, right there. This is where the arrogance of UFC to overplay their hand, where they're coming to these negotiation tables, yes, where the numbers look great, the financial numbers look great, but you know, I wonder with that Netflix supposedly with that Netflix negotiation about the Crawford Canelo fight falling apart. Now I don't really know what happened. You hear some things about Turkey overplaying his hand and what have you, but it's like, how much did the recent history before that of Canelo stinking up the joint with William School the same weekend as the Times Square, and everybody having these negative thoughts about the Saudi control over boxing? This is just boxing, but like the Saudi control over boxing and what role will you know TKO play in boxing moving forward? Does that hurt them when they go to the negotiation table because their arrogance is so large? To Alan's point here, just about UFC, they've allowed it to become a fringe niche sport again. It wasn't post pandemic. I mean, we can say all we want about Dana, and we did back then during Tachi Palace, you know, and I end up in a media hit video out of context because of that. But the record will show that we all supported Dana once he started going through regulatory bodies to bring the action back live with the safest amount of texting or testing during such a crazy and confusing time. What that did, as we already know, brought in new legions, new era of fans. So I get, okay. I criticized them before for going so hard in one direction of the political spectrum where you're gonna you know, alienate the others. The flip side to that is by doing that, they went so hard into the young male audience that was a win for them. That definitely was a win, and they were willing to take the risk from the political backlash because of the leverage and control they gain from supporting that side of the political body. But by doing all of that, and by not prioritizing building stars, by not prioritizing making super fights, and by making them, meaning you have a role in making them, the amount of money you spend on promoting it, the press tours, all that stuff, it matters in the end. It's what wakes people up. It's on the flip side, it's the same reason why a lot of us are getting really sore on the boxing side about the Turkey experience, about bringing all these big fights to Saudi Arabia where no one's watching there and there's no hype and buzz on the American side, or you know, putting them on DAZN pay-per-view with all these big matchups, so there's no chance at crossover fans buying them on either traditional pay-per-view or running into them on other networks. You're actively aiding in it becoming a fringe sport. This is what has been going on with the UFC for the past couple of years, and so it is no surprise. You know, if they went to the negotiation table 2 years ago, they'll probably get any number that they wanted because this brand, what they were bringing, was so red hot. They benefited because of the pandemic, because of Dano's maverick way and willingness to push through and get it back out there. But like, this is where I praise him. They were the only sport in town. I was driving down to the Stamford, Connecticut CBS studios after pay-per-views and doing 30-minute live post recap and analysis shows. I mean, it was a wild time. They benefited off of that for this sport to truly elevate above niche. Now, it was already on ESPN, so it was already at a point where they would have dreamed of 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? Or not 40, but from the beginning. But they allowed it to slip into niche because they got so arrogant about the value of their own brand and what those three letters represent. So they're about to find out. Maybe they still get the deal they want in the end, and we're just complaining into a shoebox here and putting it back in the closet. But yeah, it's pissing me off. Let's hear some of these pushback comments, and I get it, and I want to hear it too. Ultimately, about, hey, you know, it's capitalism, it's America, we're going after it, we're making money. Yeah, that's great, but when you're doing it, when the effect of doing that is you're killing your fan base, you're leaving your fans unhappy. Is that what you want? I mean, I get why they're doing it. The TV money is what pays at the end of the day. It's what allows them to do what they want. But these TV execs hear things too in a very volatile time. You know, Netflix saying that they want to only do big events. That's antithetical to the or what you know, big. Sometimes we try to slip in big words, and then we question, was that the right use of it? Either way, that's anti to the idea of the complaints we make about the warehouse apex era. But enough talking in circles, enough complaining. Let's move on. Let's get out of there. All right, let's get out of there. You don't need to hear that anymore. Okay. All right. Ham sandwich, real quick. Boxing is dead in the U.S. It's doing well everywhere else. Well said. Well said. It is doing well elsewhere. It's just not doing well in Saudi. You took the biggest star in the sport, Canelo, who can fill out a Las Vegas arena on one of those 2 Mexican holidays against anyone, and you put him in an arena with about 3,500 people there at 7:30 a.m. celebrating Mexican Independence Day in Riyadh. Yeah, this is aiding to the niche side of this. Like, you know what I mean? You find out quickly how hot your sport is when you go to your kids, match or game or track meet, and you're talking to the other dads, and they're like, oh, what fight are you calling this weekend? Who's fighting? It's like that's usually the test of where where UFC, for example, was a couple years ago to where now it's just night and day. And I feel like the Saudi effect has been negative. It's more like it's like I deal with this a lot. Is it more positive than negative because we got really good fights in the last year and a half, and the stages were elevated for, I guess, from like an enjoyment standpoint, or was it? What I'm really talking about is like these movie commercial trailers and these red carpet events. Only the general public's not seeing them. So yes, this is all playing into boxing feeling dead at the moment in the U.S. Riyadh Season is a monstrous player in that. And that's, again, where you have to look at what are the intentions of the power players. Obviously, everyone's intention always is to get rich. Not naive to that. But you can get rich while bolstering up your product, improving it, and raising the tide around you, raising the morale of your fan base, the interest level. They're not doing that. They're not doing that in boxing, in my opinion, in terms of trying to attract to the casuals with the use of all this gratuitous money. So that's why it gets a little nervous when you're in this industry. You pay your bills with this industry, and you want this industry to shine. I mean, look, like the fight game still rules for the people that sit and take a chance on it. Or, can you get disappointed? Can it screw you over? Yeah. Like the combat sports always find a way to screw you over. There'll be a disputed decision, a boring fight, what have you. But like the actual product itself, for the most part, has never been an issue. It's always the distribution, the packaging, and the presentation of the product, the marketing of the product. I'd like to see that get back to where they have momentum in the U.S., like I felt like boxing had coming into the Turkey era, right? Coming out of the end of Showtime in 23. What did we do in 2023? We saw one big pay-per-view after another of all these blockbuster big matchups and the launch of all these young American stars. But do these young American stars want to be fighting in Riyadh in front of 3,000 people? Yeah, they're going to get paid. Not going to become stars. So that's the perfect transition, by the way, into what the hell's going on right now with Teofimo Lopez. So if you have not been following, and I know there's many reasons from this dynamic, great fighter but very mercurial fighter, because of the ridiculousness of his online racism, the baiting he's been doing to try to land big fights. But look, one thing we do know about Teo, crazy, wild, unpredictable, out of control, but he wants to do big shit. He wants to always, and I think this is what happened in this scenario. I'll get into it. But this man wants to do really big shit. For as inconsistent he's been in some of these performances, he's still got this great glossy record, and he's still proven to you in 2 different divisions, one against Lomachenko at 135, one against Josh Taylor at 140 in lineal title fights, that when he raises his game to the highest level against the best in his class, the dude's absolutely legit, and he wants to keep making more big history. So we had been in a little bit of a debate coming off of that Times Square card where the only boxer of the 6 of those 3 main fights that actually really looked really good. Now, okay, Rolly's stock went up. He got a huge win over Ryan Garcia. It wasn't a great fight. It wasn't this beautiful, amazing performance. He did what he had to do. But it was Teofimo, the only one who had a really good performance, more or less, in that. And there's been a lot of debate. Is he going to move up to 147 and add, like he did to Lomachenko, like he did to Josh Taylor, now go up to 47 and find the toughest guy in jail on the first night, right? That's what he wanted to do. Go in there against the unified, unbeaten champion Boots. Or Team Haney and Devin Haney were arguing and saying, look, Ryan Garcia and Oscar De La Hoya don't want this Ryan Garcia rematch with Devin Haney anymore. They thought that the Haneys were like, we'll take it. It's part of the contract, but they were laughing at Ryan's performance there. Now you add on to that Ryan comes out in the last 24 hours, Ryan Garcia, and says he's got to get surgery on his hand. He's going to be out for a couple months. So we know they're not going in that direction. And I think, we're in that debate. What's the right move for Teo? The showdown with Haney, because they both won on that Times Square card. They tried to make a build-up to Garcia Haney, but that's why the dangers of marination are still there. So it looked like things were starting to fall into Haney being the more realistic option. And then Teo goes on Twitter yesterday and says, Boots turned down the fight. He doesn't want to fight me. He's ducking me, blah, blah, blah. And then he started lighting the fire under Turkey. Now, you always have to take into account that Brody Moret quickly, Teo would cook Devin Haney. I'd like to see that fight. I'd pick Haney. I'd pick Teo. But I'd really like to see that fight. But you never know if Teo's serious. But at the same time, our patience has to be gone. The patience of combat sports is gone for the BS he's been spouting out there. So when he comes out and is like, Boots is ducking me, he don't want it. Hey, hey Turkey, let's make this happen. But then it seemed Teo took one tweet too far when he wrote dictator at Turkey Al-Sheikh on Twitter. Only dictator was spelled D-I-C-K in all caps dash tater in lowercase levels. Then you get Turkey tweeting out in a separate language that you hit translate on about the idea of knowing when to stay silent when fools are speaking. And now you got Teo saying I've been fired. Is any of this true? I don't know. But we did see Dan Raphael of Fight Freaks Unite come out with 3 sources and say the plan was actually up until last night for Teofimo and Devin Haney to fight at a 140-pound catchweight in an August 16th fight. Where? In Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And that it's up in the air now because of Teo's behavior. Let me give you my personal 2 cents here. I don't think Boots is ducking him. I think Boots is looking at this like, what do I gain? I'm a unified champion, and we all know Boots is going to go to 154 one day. We all know Boots has tried his best to get all these big names, and he couldn't. Well, then why wouldn't he want Teo the big name? Well, one, because Teo said a lot of racist shit about black people in hopes of luring these matchups against these African-American stars. Is it possible that Ennis was just like, enough of this BS? I'm not rewarding that guy. It's possible. But if you look at it from a historical standpoint of trying to collect titles and do big things, what's a bigger fight for Boots, money-wise? Okay, Teo. But if he takes on Brian Norman Jr. in a unification, he's got a chance to become, 3/4 of the way there to undisputed. That would be a big fight from the standpoint of 2 young, unbeaten Americans coming together, and to be a really tough fight. I think that's more of the history Boots Ennis is trying to chase than necessarily just big names for big money. That's a bigger fight for him in terms of what he can accomplish. Boots has not been a guy up to this point that has ridden on the power of his marketing brand. Instead, it's been the opposite. It's been if people can only know how great this kid really is, if we can get him in there against elite fighters, we'll see. Well, he goes in there against Staniotis. We saw. So I think that's more, not Boots being scared. It's just, he's got a chance potentially to get into a fight with Norman. If that's the chance, do that. Or the other title at stake at welterweight, which is currently held by Mario Barrios against Manny Pacquiao, we think July 19th. So, there's big upside there, especially if Pacquiao wins. That's an even bigger fight. On the flip side, I established that Teo wants history and nothing but that. He's not really going to get history in a Haney fight. There's no titles at stake. It would be a catchweight fight. Haney is coming off a horrifically boring performance in which he shows you now, right, coming off of the tough fight against Garcia where he was dropped 3 times, Haney showing you that he's absolutely willing to stink out a fight to get the win. And you see his dad doing a media tour talking trash about how they dissected their opponent and whatever. I can understand from Teo's point of view. If he's looking at it, it's an opponent I don't necessarily want. It doesn't gain what Teo wants. Teofimo wants greatness. He wants to be able to say the amount of divisions he won titles in. He wants to be able to say the amount, that's what he's looking for. Not going to get that in this case with Haney. And I think he's starting to realize, this is my 2 cents. I think he's starting to realize that even though the money with Turkey is great, if you're not Turkey's priority, or in this case, if it's you against Haney, but in Saudi Arabia, in a tiny 4,000 seat arena where there's absolutely no buzz. I mean, remember, Teofimo's the only one in Times Square who ultimately didn't have an issue with the surroundings and all that or anything coming in. He put forth a very good performance. But remember the press conferences and the build up to that Times Square card? It was all about Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney, maybe rightfully so. But there were 3 fights on that card, not just the 2 setup fights of Haney and Garcia against other opponents. And you had Teo obnoxiously acting up under the guise of like, look, am I the only one that's going to promote this fight? Am I the only one that's going to do crazy things like come out shirtless with the suspenders or wear the lucha mask? I think he realized, for as big as that Times Square fight card was, he was, not even the B-side. He was in, another big name on it. He wasn't the story coming in. And even though he's the only one who had a very good performance, the story coming out was exclusively about how the card sucked. This is why you don't marinate. Maybe this is why you don't put fights in weird places, blah, 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 blah. So I wonder if Teo, if this whole firing is true, if Turkey drew the line, because we haven't seen this yet. We haven't seen fighters like we saw Tank, Canelo, and for a season, Tim Tszyu stand up to Turkey, where they said publicly, I don't know if I need to go sign with him right now. We haven't seen someone like stand up in a different kind of way. You know what I'm saying? Act up. This is it. It's going to be interesting to see this fallout because this could decide a lot moving forward. Do I expect Turkey or Teo to get beheaded? No, that's not the direction I'm going. But if this is Turkey saying, okay, enough, you're out of these plans, it's over. I wonder if this is part of a larger realization for some of these American fighters that yes, the money's good, but what is this doing to put forth my brand? I mean, these guys, there are a lot of fighters that chase greatness. And it's part of the formula of why these boxers get into this game and why you listen to a guy like Keyshawn Davis, it seems like all he wants is greatness. But it's really, at the end of the day, a mixture of a couple of things. Guys like Teo want to be super rich, but they know that the best path to get that is, well, by winning super big fights and getting that adulation, but by being able to control your own narrative, being a character and a player, and building your star the organic way by performances that not just boxing fans see, but that bigger than that. When he fought Loma in the pandemic live on ESPN, that was a monstrous exposure opportunity, and he hit a huge home run. He's not going to get that fighting Haney in Saudi Arabia. So this isn't me saying Turkey needs to go. He's horrible for the sport. Really, if you really did a pro and con list, it's probably more pro than con. But what I believe has to go is fights that in Riyadh that have absolutely no business there. If you want to put super duper heavyweight championship fights that involve people from other countries like Usyk, Dubois, like Joshua, like Fury, then maybe that's a better site for them. It's a shorter flight from Europe, and they're Europe-based fights. A lot of what Turkey's doing, to be fair, is Europe-based presentation. He's so tied into the zone, which is so tied into having British promoters Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren under their belt. Post-pandemic, don't forget, DAZN, which used to have headquarters in New York City, is now, from a production standpoint, is all London-based. It's why there's always British announcers, all over the broadcast, which is fine. That's not my attack. I guess what I'm saying is the fights that are okay or that make actual sense in Saudi, given the financial commitment of the kingdom in Turkey, maybe are those super heavyweight fights or better Biev versus Bivol 1 through 3. Because why? Because that fight probably never would have gotten made in the States because there wouldn't have been enough money to pay for the purses to make it worth it for both guys. Fights involving young American stars do not belong over there at all. So I actually think that's part of Teo's acting up, almost like, yeah, I don't want the Haney fight. What's it going to do for me? Either way, though, does Teo have legs to stand on at the moment? No. Yeah, I will be interested to see the fallout of it. All right, final point. PBC this weekend. Not a pay-per-view card, not an overarching best card they ever put out, but a necessary card to get two big names back at it. One in Caleb Plant, the former super middleweight title holder, and two, Jermall Charlo, the former 2-division champion, still the unbeaten fighter who 35 years old has fought just once in 4 years. We know the backstory of the divorce, the bipolar battle that Jermall's been going through, the substance abuse battles. They are in sort of quote unquote get well fights, meaning Caleb Plant's going to take on the aggressive Armando Resendiz, who's upset and stopped Jarrett Hurd a couple of years ago, had a very good fight with Elijah Garcia before getting stopped late. It's an interesting challenge for Caleb. And then in that co-main event, even though he's a big favorite, Jermall Charlo is going to have a lot of questions to answer. He should beat Thomas Cornflake Lamana, who's a step down from him in competition, but the layoff, the mental state, all of that, it's going to be worth checking out for sure. But don't sleep on of this 4-fight card. The second one in particular is going to be really good. Upset-minded Kyron Davis at middleweight, who has fought really big names at 168 before, is starting to put together a run toward a middleweight title shot. He feels like he already should have got one, considering he handed Elijah Garcia, the unbeaten prospect at middleweight, his first loss in his last fight. He's going to be taking on a guy I like a lot, 7-0 Yoenli Hernandez, the Cuban middleweight, who is on the fast track to absolute big things. This is the toughest fight of his career against Kyron Davis. So very much looking forward to that one. And looking forward just in general to seeing PBC back after a month and a half break. They got to start that momentum again going into potentially Pacquiao in July with the rumors of Fundora and Zoo on that co-main, going into the potential of a Tank Roach rematch on pay-per-view in August, rumors potentially of David Benavidez, maybe against Callum Smith in September. So a lot of big things could be coming up for the PBC in this prime era where they're still obviously in rebuilding mode, reloading mode in a lot of ways. But I'm looking forward to see both Plant and Charlo back. Obviously, they have history, which goes back to the Spence Crawford weigh-in where Jermall Charlo, in the midst of where he was at that time mentally, what did he grab on Caleb's beard aggressively, and Caleb told him to stop, and he didn't. There was a big slap heard around the world. There was a little bit of a brawl. They both say they are still building to the end of this year toward that fight happening. If they both get through these tests, I think it's going to be a very good fight. I think the best thing that can happen for this situation, of course, is Jermall Charlo come back in a big way. And because he's still got all that talent. He specifically said this week, I haven't taken damage in fights. I haven't fought just once in 5 years. I've been training through all my issues. He feels like physically he's going to be, all good and then some. So it'll be interesting to see. I'll be on the call, of course, with Mauro Ranallo, Abner Mares. It's this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Prime Video. So check that out from the Mandalay Bay, the Michelob Ultra Arena there in Las Vegas. Very fired up to be there. Having a couple months off of being a part of any live fight broadcast or calling fights has really drawn that itch out in me. But really excited to be back this weekend. And look, Caleb Plant has become your favorite fighter's favorite fighter in so many ways. So his story alone has been interesting, and he's got a second child on the way with his wife, Jordan, who's a colleague of mine over there on PBC on Prime. So we'll check that out. All right, it's time for your questions. So let's get fired up. Reggie's here. He just walked in. Let me get that door closed. And why don't you guys entertain yourselves for about 8 seconds. All right, let's hear from Keith Thurman. Heard Keith Thurman was going to be here. Sounded boring. Found the man. Still sounded boring. Yeah. All right, let's open up the flood here. It's time for your questions. Thank you for playing. The super chat is open. Thank you for letting me ramble and complain a lot. All right, let's get happy. You ready for that? MMA Fanatic sliding in. Thank you, sir. Fanatically for your support. All right. Interesting question you got going on here. ESPN Plus has started removing UFC fight videos. Is that bad news for the promotion? Not necessarily, but you could loop it into the negative. What that says to me is that they're not going back to ESPN full time. Okay. That says that to me for sure. Could that be an ESPN triggered move to build leverage right now after UFC allowed that exclusive window to sunset, I guess, thinking they were going to walk right into a big Netflix deal? Is there trouble behind the scenes? I mean, look, you can only know what you know, and what we know is not much at this point outside of what the very, seriously connected insiders have started to report. But this felt, slightly monumental in that regard. I can't necessarily say for sure if it's the death sentence for their relationship or a tip of the hat that they're going to be gone. It feels that way. Um, I hear just as many people telling me that be prepared that the UFC and TKO could extend this temporarily while they continue to negotiate. So we could see a short form extension period of UFC on ESPN. It feels like that relationship has fallen apart, even though Dana, the rare times he has spoken in the past few months, has seemed to like say, no, we're on good terms. Everything's great. They don't appear to be. And the frustration in the fan base of using ESPN Plus has been above and beyond. So again, watch this closely. It's hard to know for sure until we see what happens. It's hard to answer a lot of these unknown questions. The only thing I'm figuring out here is like, can we be done with TKO? Can we be done? No disrespect, Mr. Shapiro and Emmanuel. But you ain't in this for the right reasons. Okay. Get out. Give us our shit back. Okay. It's like when your favorite local band gets too popular for the teeny boppers. It's like, they're not my band anymore. I don't want that to happen right here. Okay. Thank you. Antonio Monzo, why would ESPN want a bad TKO product? Well, in theory, they wouldn't or shouldn't, right? But let's not forget that not all of the reasons why they currently have a bad product, not all, but if according to Dana, some of that is because ESPN was the ones who, remember, they signed a deal, they went back and extended that deal aggressively, and it was about how many fight cards can you put out? Can we get a fight card every weekend? For the most part, it's not every weekend. There's 52 weeks a year, and they did what, 44 or 42 shows last couple of years, but it's almost every weekend. If that has been ESPN initiated, then that's why I've been saying maybe the best thing for our fan appetite in terms of being UFC fans is that they go somewhere else, so that the amount of dates differs, or the setup, whether, it's some on free TV, some on pay, however it's going to work, or if they go to Netflix, could that kill pay-per-view? Like, there's a lot of questions right now that would dictate the amount of fights and whether that would, and how that affects the quality. But I think it's still a feather in the cap for ESPN, especially if they don't have to pay 3 times the amount and go to the 1 billion level, if they can still stay in this business, provided that they can sit down and talk about, let's get back to building big fights, because they've taken their eye off the ball on that. I mean, it's straight up. They've taken their eye on the ball off that. And it's like, some people say, well, BC, like, why are you always talking about casuals and crossover fans? Because that's how you gain new audiences. That's how you build your platform bigger, your brand. That's how you evolve. We need those super fights, even if those fights aren't always the preferred matchup. It's why I said, Poirier McGregor, 6 months ago may have been the best thing they could have done if they would have done that, because you need those type of big passing of the torch rubs when a big name can take the win from the old name and move on from that in that regard. Now, Topuria is still rising quickly and may not need that, but I don't think necessarily ESPN would want a bad product. I also think there's some real boost to what UFC could provide them, meaning constant fill of content on their plus, on their streaming app. But things have changed since they signed that deal, both for ESPN and for UFC. So, yeah, a lot of crazy stuff going on here. A lot of crazy stuff. All right. Dick's Insider, the intention of all of us. BC is Caleb Plant to land the most jabs free money. In this matchup, yes. Caleb's going to be building behind that jab. He's going to outwork Resendiz. Look, Armando Resendiz is tough. He's got a little bit of pop. Even though he's moving up to super middleweight, he has fought. He turned pro as a light heavyweight. He fought a ton of fights at super middleweight early in his career. So I don't expect the weight move up to be a big issue. He is a volume puncher himself, likes to get inside, but Caleb's not going to be there to be hit. So I really think Caleb's going to really control him with that jab. And I think from a betting standpoint, that certainly could be a plus in the direction that you would want to go there. All right. Devin Tuck, my man, Fireball or Rumpelman? How about neither? Neither for the most part. All right, thank you for supporting this. If I had to pick between the two, I'd go fire. But man, I hate shots for the most part. Although I've been loving these tequila shots from the Blanco, particularly the Blanco of Cuervo. So check out pregame preview next week with AB and A Bron and pregame preview. What's that going to be like? I don't know. You got to check that out. You got to find out for yourself. All right, I got to let Reggie out, so I'll be right back.
Jim, I got to tell you something. Are these guys Russian or are they just in a hurry?
All right, 4 rounds to 3. There we go. All right, back to the questions here. 9:15 a.m. Did ESPN start removing all the UFC catalog? So not all of it, but a lot of it. It appears that the most recent cards are there, but the idea of, go to ESPN Plus for a poor man's version of UFC Fight Pass, that appears to be over. So that appears to be a telling moment. Just hard to tell where that's going to go. Everything seems to be fluid right now. Everything. Remix is in the house. All right. All right. All NBA white guys starting 5 and bench, he asks. I got Kid. Chris Mullin, misspelled, but that's fine. Larry Bird, Dirk, and Nikola Jokic. My bench is Nash, Stockton, Kevin McHale, Kevin Love, and Bill Walton. Honorable mention, Jay Will, Jason Williams, okay, Jerry West, and John Havlicek. I mean, this is an interesting topic in these times, in any times. But here's the deal. I've long been enamored with the put that back up, with the plight of the white American NBA player, because it previously in the eras, particularly the 80s and 90s, well, the 80s you had a lot of white guys, but 90s not so much, early 2000s, you really had to be good to be there. You could be there as a specialist, 3-point shooter. You can be in the NBA as a specialist, at least in the 90s, a specialist bulky big man like a Greg Ostertag type. But it felt like with the direction, the evolution of the athlete in the NBA, which has been incredible. For as much as I don't love today's game, certainly comparable to my sweet spot of the 90s there, the combined skill evolution and athleticism is just remarkable. Now, the skill evolution part I can always quibble with, because I think one of the biggest issues of today's NBA game is, the lack of a mid-range game for a lot of guys. The fact that it's you either can drive to the hoop or you can hit a 3, and that seems to be it. Rarely, not seeing it, a lot of posting up, not seeing the way the game used to be played, for better or for worse. I always felt like that would hurt the white American, but I've been, it's been interesting to see how many guys have come on and are bucking that trend, as sort of like the minority player. My debate here is, and this is a debate I had going back to the 90s, are European stars actually white NBA players? You know what I mean? Like, I guess if, from a skin tone, standpoint, be careful, BC, right? No, I just mean, like, they seem to be different athletes. They seem to come with much different combined skill sets. When I'm thinking of the white NBA player, I'm not thinking of Jokic and Dirk here, and if I'm making that all white team. Now, if you're going to let me do that and go into the other countries and into Europe, then you can make, especially now, all-time great teams. I mean, I think you got to have Dirk and Jokic, as you do right there. You got to have Bird. I'd slide Jerry West ahead of Chris Mullin there, especially because he can also play the point for you. And I think even though he played in an earlier era, that wouldn't have mattered, because his competitiveness, size, shooting ability is just fine. So yeah. Now, if you were taking out the European angle, J Kidd, I don't think is white. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, I'm not going to put it on anybody. You can be who you want to be, but what are we doing here? Yeah. Pistol Pete, Old Man Dave saying scoring ability, but not going to give it to you. A new segment, BC white on white. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, this is good. We're going down the wrong road here. Okay, we're going down the wrong road. Shouldn't we just debate racism in the WNBA? Should we just waste our time with that too? I would say this, though. If we were going traditional old American white guys, my all-time team would have to be Stockton and Jerry West in the backcourt. Bird McHale, Tom Chambers and the other one, I don't know. If you can let me in on the international side, then yeah, we gotta sub in Dirk and Jokic in the front court. But it is interesting. It is interesting. The whatever. Brian Scalabrine, Thunder Dan, Marley, Rex Chapman. Yeah, more role. I mean, you know, Marley, former All-Star, Chapman, you know, a good scorer in his prime, but more role player-ish there, not necessarily taking over stars of it. Shout out to the Dunleavys though, senior and junior being an you know, really good underrated player. Had a decent run for not having great speed in that era in the 2000s there. Yeah. LNW, Jason Kidd is half. Yeah, I think so, but you know, I'm really not trying to play this game either to exploit that, but you know, whatever. I mean, can we just not see color ultimately and just get past the BC what on white segment and get into there? But yeah, I remember specifically the plight of the white NBA player in the 90s where you'd sort of like look out like who's coming up? Is it going to be Keith Van Horn? You know, is it going to be Wally Serbiak? Who's going to come in and be a star? And none necessarily did. And I remember in particular that 1997 Sports Illustrated cover that said, what happened to the white NBA player? That was always pretty interesting. Reggie's back. Hold on one second. All right, Reg. You good?
Yeah.
All right. Bird's on and every white team, you know that. I mean, he's the greatest white player of all time. Jay Allen in the house, my brethren. Thank you. Congrats to you and your missus on the recent addition to your family. What up, BC? MMA mythical matchup. Prime Yoel Romero. So we're talking what, like kneeing Chris Weidman in the face, that version of him, versus oh, this is a great question. Versus 2013 TRT Tour Belfort. That's a great ass question. I think you would see a lot of circling and pawing and feinting and looking and not a ton of action because you are talking about two insane quick twitch fiber athletes at their most insane physical primes right there. Let me call up Yoel Romero and square in on this prime. I mean, like the 2013 version of Vitor with the mohawk with the there's just, you know, he broke because of the drugs. He breaks all the rules. I mean, the speed and tightness on that spinny shit that got Bisping, Dan Hendo, and a debuting Luke Rockhold in the same calendar year. It is one of those mythical creatures that you can literally put in there against anybody in history and be like, I'm not counting Belfort out, okay? But there's some Spider-Man meme part if you're looking at absolute prime Yoel here. So Yoel Romero stops Chris Weidman in the fight before his interim middleweight championship bout against Robert Whittaker in 2017. If you recall, he would lose a close decision to Whittaker in the first fight. Then he would knock out Luke Rockhold, this is Romero, one fight later to win the interim championship, or should have been, but he missed weight. And then he gets a second chance at Robert Whittaker, which turns into a split decision. Romero missed weight on that again, so he was in that stretch where you couldn't have given him a title no matter what. I feel like he won that second fight and deserved his hand raised at least once. But this is the period we're talking about his absolute prime, because if you recall, the Whittaker second loss would start a loss of 4 consecutive fights, from the wild brawl with Costa to the weird title loss to Israel Adesanya to the split decision loss against Phil Davis in his Bellator debut. But before the first Whittaker fight, that's where you saw this guy go unbeaten in 8 straight UFC fights to kick off his octagon career. And in particular, elbowing Lyoto Machida for a 3rd round knockout in 2015, the split decision win over Jacare, and then that flying knee against Weidman. Belfort's more dangerous and more complete with that submission game. Romero never really leaned on his wrestling as a main source. You know, it was always the boxing mixed with the freak athleticism. I think you're going to see a lot of pawing, and it's going to be a little bit disappointing, but when they let the stuff go, I mean, or will it? Or will it turn into exactly what one of the most underrated fights of the modern era turned out to be, the Romero versus Paulo Costa fight? Because Costa went in there in round one and was like, we brawling, baby. And then we got 15 minutes of absolute incredible action, including a round one that needs to be put in a time capsule. I'm slightly taking the mythical creature Belfort, though. I think that when they trade, when they get in that, I mean, that really is the MMA equivalent to Barry Bonds going ham on the PEDs, where he was already a multi-time MVP and arguably the best player in baseball, but then watches Sosa, McGuire get all the fanfare and is like, I'm better than these guys. So once that guy went to the top shelf gear, we saw things we didn't even think were possible. I think to some degree, that's what 2013 Vitor was. He's going to take that fight. Thank you. Great question. Great question. Lazy Bed back in here. BC, what do you think of the news that Triller is going broke and actively shopping BKFC around to potential buyers? Not surprised, mother effers, is my first reaction. I mean, do you remember the debacle that was that prime Triller run where they're, rolling out Metallica and Eminem, and remember they had like 5 concerts on one fight card, like Bieber's coming out for a song, and you're just like, I get having a celebrity on commentary like they did with Pete Davidson or whoever else they had, and then you got one band or 2, 5 bands is like, it was such a gratuitous waste of money. And then you watch the leaders of Triller get interviewed in the ring after some of these cards, and they look like they just came out of the Coke room at a college party, right? So it's like, you're like, yeah, this ain't gonna last. I'm surprised there's still a thing, although barely even in name form right now. But what's crazy is that BKFC actually has some punch and some real value, and so and still a potentially very bright future. Although it does look like, there's more competition now. Mike Perry's Dirty Boxing, I think, is where John Jones is also, I think, a part owner. I mean, if you see that card that they got coming up for their second one in June, like they're adding ex-UFC names left and right there. BKFC still is that's why we had that debate on MK recently of, what if TKO did go after them? Is that actually the better lane for them in the hand fighting space than going into traditional boxing? I still think there's a ceiling for BKFC that they haven't hit yet, and that there's some things that they do very, very well. So it's disappointing that BKFC finds himself in this spot because of Triller's ridiculousness. I mean, Triller hasn't paid employees in months. They haven't met deadlines on anything that they've been supposed to do. So this is just a train falling off of the tracks. And again, I'm not surprised, but it's going to open up the opportunity for somebody to make a power move here for a brand in BKFC that's got some life. Definitely has some life. So, is Connor still a part? Danger Mouse. Hey, shout out to Danger Mouse. Yeah, he still seems to be co-owner despite all of his own bullshit. So that's why I think it would be only perfect if TKO got involved in there. But we talked about an MK. Now you're taking another well-paying option off the board for people that are sick of getting gouged by TKOs and before that UFC's tight margins there. Brody Moret, BC, if Turkey really did mess up UFC's Netflix deal, which has been rumored by multiple outlets, do you think TKO will start swooping boxers away from Turkey to get revenge? Maybe Teo going to sign with Dana. I like, Brody, the pro wrestling storyline side of that for sure, but it ain't going to happen. Most importantly, TKO's in the business of making as much money as possible without risk. All right. That's why everything is getting jacked up, all the prices. That's why they are going places where they are getting the highest bidder. That's why TKO just had WWE say, sorry, New Orleans, we know we announced you as next year's WrestleMania home, but instead we're going to go to Allegiant for the second straight year. You could argue that there's connectivity to what happened. Did Turkey piss off Netflix so much, piss off Allegiant by taking that fight off of, their calendar? I don't know. Or is this just TKO saying, look, what's the best way to save as much money as possible? How about not traveling? That's why they do so many cards in the Apex, because it's so cost efficient. That's why I believe the WWE offices there's rumors that everything's going to move to Vegas, that you're just going to continue to combine WWE and UFC together and eliminate people. If people are going to get eliminated, it's going to be on the WWE side because they're trying to streamline things to save and make as much money as possible. So no, they're not going to do that. I still stand by my belief that if Turkey and TKO never get rolling, if it's over now, then the biggest miss for them was not using that Saudi money to purchase a major boxing promotion and have that be the house. That's the house roster. And then you slowly acquire everybody else and you make that whoever you purchased, whether it was Top Rank, whether it was whatever. And then you started to build that up. And also not aggressively going after the casual fan, which has been a big issue for Turkey. And I think is maybe part of the lost in translation of him not being that aware of this market and because his intention isn't to build boxing. His intention is to carry out what he wants to for the kingdom. And then also I think to put himself over with everything he's doing for ring, what have you. But no, I don't think that's going to happen. All right. Final time, not letting this cat back in. Okay. It's over. Him and I, by the way, on the rocks right now. You got to understand this man's intention. This man's intention 3/4 of the day is mayhem. All right, murder was the case that they gave him. Okay, hold on. I'll be right back. All right, that's it, Reg. You're out. You're gone. All right. Alan W. $1 billion is a sucker deal. Yeah, really seems like it, especially for a product that's going in the wrong direction aggressively, consistently. Really seems like it right now. No doubt about it. Alan W. also sliding in with great support for the show. Thank you. TKO cut out almost all house shows for WWE. They are actively stripping WWE of the things that make the fan base actively support that, in my opinion. It's not just the naivety that they have to take their strong-armed sort of right-wing stance and throwing it at WWE like they've done for UFC to disastrous results, from Hogan getting booed in LA to them putting Ron DeSantis on camera in Florida thinking it's going to be this great thing. And he got, booed to shit because the WWE audience is different and they have been forever. It's like Vince, for all his issues, and there's a lot of them, he did understand the fan. He did understand there was the commitment to keeping prices down to a certain degree. There was always, there was for a right-winged guy that's so heavily on that path, he knew how to play into the fan base. That's why there was so many things like Black History Month, like Breast Cancer Awareness Month, even when it felt like ad nauseum, they're pushing it down our throat. I understand that the times have changed, but TKO just coming in and just stripping all this stuff, letting go people that have been there forever, now cutting out house shows because they look at it from only a financial standpoint of like, what are we gaining when you take away the whole grassroots thing of how WWE continues to build new fan bases, how it's such a family-friendly program, and that house shows are a big part of that. House shows are a completely different experience than being at a live event, like completely different. It's so much playing to the crowd and and being good times and all that. They're aggressively reshaping that, and I think it's going to end in a big miss. Maybe they'll still make big money, but and maybe still draw big crowds, but they're effing with a lot of what. It's not that there's never need for change or evolution and all that, but they're messing with core tenets to the experiences of these two genres or sports or whatever you want to call them, that I don't feel like they truly know what they're messing with. Just me. Brody's back at it. BC, have you noticed things went downhill for Turkey ever since he teamed up with Dana? Dana has a bad reputation in the boxing world. I think it scared some fighters away. Turkey messed up. Oh yeah, Turkey messed up here. I don't think he messed up by aligning with Dana and TKO per se. I felt that the way that Quick Trigger Turkey announced this whole thing on March 5th, as I've said before, by telegraphing their plan so far in advance, it sent this message to everybody else in boxing that like pretty soon your gravy train's over. You know, the temerity, to take a Luke Thomas word, to come out on March 5th and be like, yeah, Dana, Nick Khan, and I, this is Turkey speaking, we're going to crush the competition. It's like, dude, the competition is still sucking on your teat at the moment, all right? They're still depending on you for the next Ring Mag card or Riyadh Season card. So do I believe that, you know, aligning with Dana has hurt him or has changed things? Yes and no, but I really think this was a huge miscalculation. Now, the rumors I had heard, had been that the only reason that was announced on March 5th, and I've said this before, was to push back on Jake Paul, because Jake Paul was close to announcing the Katie Taylor Serrano fight on Netflix. There was, you know, it seemed like there was this big race to which combat sports entity was going to get on Netflix, you know, permanently or regularly first. And a lot of people thought that was Turkey's way of sending a message to all the big lenders out there, to all the big networks, all the big everybody, that like, don't buy anyone else's product. This is the real one coming. Well, you know, you gave your partners that will soon be competitors time to sort of like go, wait, maybe we shouldn't be in this. Now, a lot of them are still hanging on because it's a prize fighting game and it's about money at the end of the day. And that's just it right there. But yeah, Brody, you might have a point that you're bringing in someone that's not only from the outside, you're bringing in the biggest critic of boxing possible, right? Like, you're bringing in a guy who shits on it left and right and has a long history of, you know, being at odds with promoters, having this war of words with Bob Arum for years. It didn't feel like that was super smart in the way that they handled it. And, you know, maybe some of that was Turkey just, again, not being able to read the room in other situations, because they rule with an iron fist over there. They get what they want. Read the New York Times story behind the paywall there about Turkey's history over there. They get what the frick they want by strong arming. And it's not as easy to do that in you know, Western business in that regard. So it is, in hindsight, I don't think TKO was the wrong people per se to execute the vision that they had. Although right now, again, it could be blown up. We have no idea. But the handling of it, the way he did it, yeah. We got too much TKO in our lives right now. Way too much of it. All right. Saul's great. Saul's great. Right, straight from the gutters of Louisville, my man, Saul, all right? He's hanging up there with his brother Manuel Jr., getting the shit done, okay? Registered Republican ? When you move into Austin, B. Heard CT is North Korea with a Cumberland Farms. Congratulations to the Schaub family, who I believe have arrived in Texas. All right. See cowboy hats for all. Yeah. I have never voted for a Democratic president. I also voted for Nader once, you know, but basically that's what I used to do when my opinion of the two candidates was ill. I would just, you know, but now I'm just like, there's no such thing as voting for the lesser of the evil. But I'm a different cat politically. I largely lean financially conservative. But I've changed some of my beliefs in recent years too, because, you know, ultimately to me, it's people first, right? And if that's a left-leaning lean, then okay, I'm infiltrating that into my own cosmic mix of political views, which also includes and has included for many a decade a deep distrust of government. And yeah, so I'm not your typical guy on either side. Both sides are crazy people, okay? And they have crazy people. It's freaking crazy out there, all right? All right, there we go. 9:15 a.m. Heard Teofimo just got an invite to the Saudi Arabian consulate. Are we doing jokes here? Is that real? I mean, we'll see how this plays out. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting how this little dust up plays out, or even if the dust up is real. There's so much freaking misinformation out there. It's like, imagine if these entities had actually speakers. You know, imagine if we had regular times, or at least we thought we used to, right after UFC pay-per-views. Well, at least after the UFC pay-per-view, we'll hear Dana's comments on it. Oh wait, he got on the private jet. We got to talk to Shaw again. Yeah, that's what we're running with lately. All right. Mr. Turley, BC, I like the way you think. All right. I mean, you know, that's cool. Thank you. Think what you want, though, at the end of the day. Get out there. Figure it out. Politics, religion, all these things we're not supposed to talk about. Get out there and figure it out for yourself. Thank you. Brody, BC moving to Austin, getting on Kill Tony, and joining the Rogan sphere would be a funny saga. Imagine if I went undercover into the Rogan sphere, just to, like, just to pump the Reddit board. That'd be wild. That'd be wild. Old man Dave, Texas outlawed all THC, even Delta 8. Yeah, that's not our state, folks. Okay, no, I don't have much history. I do like Austin a lot. Great city, great food, culture, music city, but I really don't have a lot of experience outside of covering fights in Dallas or Houston. I wouldn't be against exploring that state, for the nature it has to offer. I like Mexico. I like Mexican culture. But yeah, there you go. All right, Donnie Brasco is here. Thank you, sir, for coming out and supporting me like this. It's appreciated. Love the content, BC. On MK yesterday, you mentioned your takeout pizza order with your family was awful. What was the order and what went wrong? I won't shout out the restaurant in this case, but I still currently in the garage fridge have like another 12 slices that need to get eaten because the rest of the family's like, we ain't touching that. Basically, I did what I never like to do, which is to order pizza from a restaurant that thinks it's much more gourmet and glamorous than it actually is, because a lot of those restaurants, and I think in this area of Connecticut, greater Hartford, affluent suburbs, there's very, very, very good restaurants and cuisine in every category, but everybody wants to believe that they are, super duper important and gourmet. And when you order a place from a pizza from a non-traditional pizza place, and particularly one who thinks that they are doing something very ethnic and special and different, this is the kind of place that you can only buy smalls. It's very personal pizza, and they're very ambitious in the ingredients that they choose. And it's one of those things where, like, the first couple bites taste really good and different, but then you realize I'm really just eating a lot of inflated puffy bread here. And it hurt a lot of people's stomachs. And I don't think the rest of my family liked some of the aggressive combinations of ingredients that they used. It was a very niche order. And there was a couple different weird combinations there. And it was a fail. It was a big doom, 5 big dooms. But I'm not letting that pizza go to waste. All right, I'll still take it downtown. All right. So I had pizza for lunch and dinner yesterday, lunch today, and I'll try to take that thing out before I leave. Maybe that's the old factory town degenerate in me, but yeah, I like to get pizza from established pizza places, and I got a lot of good ones around here. It's just Connecticut after all. Thank you. My go-to order these days, it's meatball and pineapple. I mean, that's the winning combination right now. That's the one that's changing lives. But this was like a super Italian upscale place that's like, got 4 different kinds of spicy sausages on the same slice. My family was like, we out of this. Thank you. And the problem was I talked everybody into it. I was like, no, we can do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're even going to have them deliver it. Like, I talked everybody into it, talked a big game. So it's on me, right? It's on me at the end of the day. That's how it happens, Brody Moret, Junko Nakatani, the 118 champion, is the truth. Yeah, he's the absolute truth. He's a Japanese fighter with big power, holds distance very well, has that sort of like, bouncy style from the, when he fights Inoue at 122, I hope that is, here's what I hope it is. If you're a boxing guy, you'll remember this. One of my favorite fights ever, for atmospheres through the TV screen, for the I just need to see what it looks like feel coming in, was the super middleweight unification in 2007 at Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, Wales, between unbeaten champion Joe Calzaghe and unbeaten champion Mikkel Kessler. It was billed as the biggest fight in Europe's history. Massive crowd, two who we can tell were generational guys. And they went in there and had a very beautiful fight. And even though it was Wales's fight, the UK's fight, Europe's fight, passion and pageantry is universal. It was our fight as boxing fans. I want to see that same version in Junko Nakatani versus Naoya Inoue in the Tokyo Dome in Japan. I want to see all this. I want it to be a celebration of Japanese boxing, and arguably you can bill it as, arguably the biggest matchup ever. That's going to be awesome. I think we get that. I think you're going to see Inoue against Akhmadaliev, who he's kind of long overdue to test himself, the former unified champion at 122. And like we've been talking about, I think there's enough matchups still of guys moving up for Inoue that he doesn't necessarily need to rush to 126 to a fifth division, which could end up being the bridge too far. Like when Chocolatito in his mid-30s ran into Srisuke Sor Rungvisai there at 115 pounds, and that rematch got sent to hell. I really want to see if the next couple fights for Inoue are Akhmadaliev, Junto Nakatani, and then maybe Bam Rodriguez. Okay. Yeah, there's some big fights. As much as I'd love to see Inoue go to 26 and fight Fulton, fight Nick Ball, fight, Brandon Figueroa, fight the dude Rafael Espinoza from Top Rank. There's some really great ones, okay? Really big ones that we need to see first. B-Vol, my man. Gourmet pizza usually just means weird topics. Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it. There it is. All right. There it is. A lot of conversations going on here. I'm like, is that a conversation aimed at me? You know what I'm saying? All right. Mohi Abro. That's a heck of a name right there. I love that. Mohi Abro. Mojito bro. Yeah. All right. Yo, B Sizzle, what will it take for you to get back into pro wrestling and cover it? And what's your favorite era? It's Salam from Pakistan. Wow, dude. Shout out to this guy, Salam. Wow. All right. I don't know. Here's what it would take. There's like this pro wrestling project / podcast / thing that's been thrown around for a while with me and another big name. It may see the light of day. It may not. I kind of felt like that might be the thing that gets me to dip my toes back in. The problem is, like, I'm an all or nothing guy. And when I was in boxing, pro wrestling podcasting, okay, shout out to Peter Rosenberg, Stat Guy Greg, Cheap Heat, David Shoemaker, right? I was a member of that show for less than a year in 2016, a great era of Cheap Heat era, okay? When I went to CBS Sports and with Adam Silverstein, Nick Costos, and did my own, pro wrestling podcast there for a bunch of years, for what, 3.5 years. I didn't want to just be like the guys that come up and talk about what happened on Raw last week. I mean, I was watching everything. NJPW, when it would be time for that summer incredible, Japan tournament there, I'd be getting up early and watch, it was a sickness that to do that and boxing and MMA at the highest level, it became so untenable. I can't even believe I was able to keep up, my health and my marriage during that era. It really got to the point where maybe luckily Vince McMahon just butchered the booking and really stopped. For as much as I said earlier that he had for all his faults, he cares about the fans. Well, I got to pull back on that and say the booking in at the end of 2018 and all through 19 was just deplorable. So it really just allowed me to be like, yeah, maybe I don't need this in my life and career as aggressively. It felt like a niche to scratch an itch. Excuse me. It felt like an itch scratching nostalgic tour for me to get back into it when I did. And in the run I had from 2016 to 2020 and covering it, I miss it. And I know I could get back into it just a little by little, watch a little Raw here, watch a little AEW here, watch a little this. Every time I do that, I go, nah, it's not time. It's not time yet. I don't feel it yet. I don't want it yet. There were some parts of the 2-night WrestleMania this year that gave me some of those feels again. I've come in and out, watched Royal Rumble this year and I was like, ooh, yeah. I don't know. It would probably have to be something where I'm getting paid to do something cool with other people that I like, which is possible. But I miss the theatrical side of pro wrestling podcasting. I say that a lot, but I mean it. Nick Costos and I used to fool the audience on the regular basis that we were like, at odds with each other. And I mean, it lends itself to kind of play into kayfabe there of your own. And it's a fun ride if you like that. But we'll have to see. I mean, I only have, I call fights. I got a YouTube channel. I got important podcast, and I got a full-time job separate from that too, and also I'm a dad and husband. So, yeah, we'll see. All right. Final half hour here. Let's jam. HLD though. Thank you, brother. Teo never agreed to a marathon with Haney. 145. What the F division is that? Yeah, it's we're not fully welterweights, but maybe Teo doesn't want to give up the belt yet. I mean, Teo's at 140. Yeah, it's tough. Okay, HLD goes on to say they tried to shove that down his throat. He was promised boots. Now a Phillies duck soup special. Dan's sources, the Haneys. A lot of words being strung together there. I get it if you're going to play it from Teo's perspective. He probably was not guaranteed, but close to that, hey, you'll be fighting boots. And, I mean, that's the thing here. It's like Turkey's acting the role of super promoter. Fighters are, and some promoters are kind of just letting it happen. I mean, I feel like Top Rank's doing that partially because they don't really want to deal with Teo. So it's like, okay, they'll just take, their fee from it. But this is where this is where we got to get past whatever role Turkey's going to play. I think we got to get past this role of like benevolent uncle. Like, because there's a reason why Top Rank matches people so well, and they have so many matchmakers in the Hall of Fame. Where Turkey's just kind of doing this video game matchmaking and making stuff on a whim. Oh, this feels good or this feels hot at the moment. I don't think that's going to benefit the fighters in that way. So maybe there was a situation where Teo felt like, I'm in this to make history and do big shit. I want to fight boots. You can't give that to me. I don't need Haney for a potential boring fest and a catchweight fight that means nothing. Yeah, it kind of plays into what I'm saying. There could be part of Teo that feels like he was wrong, so maybe that's why he's come out aggressively. But don't forget too, I think Teo and his dad, like, they like being hard to handle, hard to hold down. They like being unpredictable all the time. I know Top Rank doesn't love it, but they like that. I think they feel like it allows them like the leverage to bounce around. They're always kind of coming up with their own marketing deals and sponsorship deals. And as a way to say, look at the brand we are, we got that. We brought in that deal. But they got to work closely with an actual promoter who can plan things out for him, because the way Turkey's been doing it, it's been fun, but it's been a little gratuitous too. Like, as much as I love some of these super cards, so a lot of these fights and fighters feel like they're just forced on there. I remember that big one in LA, or the one that was earlier this year was that one where it was billed as the biggest card of all time. Right. And it's like, it's also just a lot of fighters and fights being thrown on without a plan of attack of where they're going in their journey toward, rankings and belts and unifications and all that. So I'm not surprised that issues like this would arise. I think that's where we have to figure out, like, because Turkey's not going to be in this role forever of just like all the promoters that are willing to work with me. Let me take, like, we got to figure out, is it going to be you and TKO and you're going to be your own promotion, or what is the future going to look like? This uncertainty in boxing really has been there since the end of 2023, when Showtime went away and a big power player fell, and through the year and a half of Riyadh season, it's only become more confusing and more, interesting at times, but very difficult. You're killing me, Kat. All right. RM, thank you for your support in the show. The summer UFC lineup is pretty great, definitely from a main and in some degrees co-main point of view. Main events, they actually nailed it for the most part this summer. No Elia Islam, but there's a reason why we're excited about a bunch of these. But then again, for as great as the 318 Holloway Poirier 3 fight is, and how much that activates a lot of the things I really like, right? We're really doing Vettori, Brendan Allen as a pay-per-view co-main? Are you freaking kidding me? Okay, back to your question, RM. The summer UFC lineup is pretty great, but I feel like a lot of fans will stay satisfied with the UFC until we have an announcement sorting out heavyweight. I can't understand if you meant to say you feel like fans will say, okay, sorry, I read that wrong. I feel like a lot of fans will stay dissatisfied with the UFC until the announcement. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, that's why I really am like kind of hoping they'll come out with some big announcement to turn back this tide of negativity or worry or fear. If that announcement's Jones Aspinall for November, then about freaking time. Let's go. Let's get hyped up for it. Let's go. Or maybe that big announcement is the TV home that they're going to, and maybe that excites all of us, because that would probably mean whoever they've been holding back will get a chance to come and fight. But it's been great from a main event standpoint. But can we get back to deep cards? Can we get back to trying again, please? Please. At least they're getting it right on the main events, and you got to nail those. Okay, you got to nail them. All right, I'm going to work out a system to deal with these cats moving forward. Okay, thank you so much. MMA Fanatic, we hit that all right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, we've got Sidney Frankenstein. He's back. He's back here. He's back in a big way. Appreciate you, sir. What other MMA podcasts do you enjoy? Preferably if you can mention any without former fighters. I would say, so I don't currently. I mean, look, you know, what was that? Oh, okay.
You just touch gloves. Why do you need to touch the gloves again? You just touch gloves.
All right, sorry for the delay. I don't look. Podcasts have been around for a long time. There were a few big highs already where we were all subscribed to 1 million of them, and that was a great form of entertainment. Even I've really come to the point where sometimes listening to too many can negatively alter the way you deliver your own. So that was been part of me not getting into it. I do love being on between the links on MMA fighting with the great Mike Hack, Jed Mishu. They got some, you know, recurring friends like AK Lee on there. Great show to be on, really funny show to watch, really hits, you know, sort of the around the horn of MMA type of feel on there. Shout out to what Mike Bone's been doing lately. I've caught a couple of that. I really enjoyed the Chael Sonnen and Rick Rude thing that happened in the last 24 hours, but definitely Submission Radio. I mean, they've always been great for interviews. I definitely get down with them and really love Dennis. Casper's gone now, but big fan of Dennis. Love contributing it on there. But I wouldn't say I'm a big MMA podcast head in that regard. All right. Thank you. Let's hear from Vital George or Jorge 85. Very vital to this podcast today. Thank you, sir. BC, Abbey Road or Pet Sounds. This man, Vital Jorge, is more of a Pet Sounds guy himself. It comes together perfectly as a whole, much better. We're talking about two of the greatest albums of all time, and I'm a huge Pet Sounds guy. You know, you hear about it. You know, I hear about that album as a young Beatles fan, you know, and how much it inspired Paul McCartney to write Sgt. Pepper. And you're like, oh crap, you know, and it's weird when you're growing up, you sort of like, the only thing I knew about the Beach Boys were the surf songs, right? Until I heard God Only Knows on the Wonder Years. Wonder Years was such a great outlet for classic rock music. But I got so into it that I remember I had a friend that worked at Walmart and allowed me to get a free 99 box set version that had like the entire 6 discs of like, you know, so I got really into that record. But Pet Sounds monstrously innovative and influential. Brian Wilson is an absolute genius, but Abbey Road's a better rock album. Abbey Road's a better overall, without question. Abbey Road was my favorite Beatles album and my favorite album of all time for, you know, a couple decades. I still slightly favorite over Revolver in the Beatles canon. I still believe it's a clearly a top 10 album, maybe even top 5 for me all time. So I'm going to lean on that. You have to understand, like, that was the last album the Beatles recorded, even though Let It Be technically came out after that. And it was, for all of us that watched that Get Back documentary, you can see the dysfunction that was going on in the recording of Get Back, which is why they sort of shelved the project, or let it be. And, this was George Martin coming back and saying, look, let's do one more album before we break up. And let's do it the old way, where you guys need to listen to me. We'll work together. And that was a return, because they're coming off of the psychedelic run. And, love it or hate it, right? Like Sgt. Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour, the Yellow Submarine soundtrack. Yeah, and I know the White Album's in between that. And the White Album is this mixture, this perfect double album soup of everything ever, right? Every genre all mixed into one. So it's sort of its own thing. But they're coming out of the psychedelic rock era and getting into a more root sound, which is why Let It Be, the sessions had promised in the beginning, because they were recording, a rootsy rock record and kind of doing it live, right? Abbey Road was sort of like, let's get back and do what we do best one more time. And I think it's by far the most profound statement they've ever put out. It's just absolutely beautiful musically. And the second half, McCartney, really leading that charge, but the second half, sweet, with all the songs playing into each other, it just was so innovative and mind-blowing to me as a young music fan. Some of the greatest listens of my life have been, in car rides at night with the sunroof open with my friends in high school, listening to Abbey Road and just like looking at each other being like, damn, what an album. Now, Pet Sounds is entirely different, and Pet Sounds can be easy to miss too, to not really understand how innovative it was, to what's really going on there, the soundscape being built by Brian Wilson. And, he really was the brains of that band, the orchestrator, the composer, the genius behind it. It's not that those other guys couldn't sing or weren't, didn't add something, but that was his maniacal magnum opus without question. And it is so beautiful. And it's one of the greatest concept albums of all time. I like how you say it, everything just comes together perfectly as a whole. It just sort of flows, and concept albums do that. Whether the concept is the structure of the topical structure of the vocals, or the way that the songs complement each other, or sonically, the sort of organized statement that you're trying to put out. This is very much sonically a concept album, and it is also some of Brian Wilson's most vulnerable lyric writing as well. So amazing album. If you're a very novice of the Beach Boys history and only think of them in pop surf songs from the early to mid 60s, this is a mature statement from them, and deserves the respect it gets. But it's a little bit more niche, in my opinion, than Abbey Road, which is just a top to bottom, it's almost perfect. It really is. I mean, not completely, but thank you. From Old Man Dave, Brian Wilson is basically the only good Bare Naked Ladies song. So the whole BNL thing, they're a really annoying band. But, and I've said this before when Run Dem Cheeks asked me my favorite live albums on here. Am I the only one who can sit here and honestly say the Rock Spectacle live album that they put out in the late 90s is absolutely immaculate? I will stand up for that album, and I will tell you that they have many good. And the thing is, it's like weird. You hear that album enough, and you're like, damn, it's kind of good. But then you go listen to their studio albums, and in my opinion, they're not good. The songs are janky and all over the place. But they got a few more than just Brian Wilson. They jumped the shark with 1 Week, the album that came out right after this live album, and they've been whatever. If you like them, that's fine. But come on, Jane. Come on. Life in a Nutshell. I mean, come on. All right, whatever. Maybe I'm talking to myself. Yeah, great album. Never heard it. There we go. Thank you, Old Man Dave. Great stuff. All right. Speaking of Rum Dem Cheeks, my guy Joe is back. Thank you, Joe, for jumping in here. You always have great music questions. I should just start a spinoff music podcast, right? That's where I'm going with this. Okay. I need you to talk some sense into me, Joe says. I've convinced myself that the Doors' debut album is better than any Beatles record. Tell me I'm wrong and why. Dude, I will have to say, and I was just texting great MK fan, music fan, Corey Marlin. Shout out to Corey, where he's falling into the Doors out of nowhere and kind of did the same. It's weird, my history with the Doors, real quick. My dad played the greatest hits all the time when I was young, so I had that as a foundation. They were like along with Jimi Hendrix, they were like the first classic rock band that I really fell into sophomore year of high school, freshman year of high school, where I kind of evolved from a love of like 60s pop hits, bubblegum through Motown, through all that, into like, okay, let's get into some deeper stuff here. And then I sort of stopped looking at the Doors as anything but like gateway drug into classic rock. Even though I owned Morrison Hotel and LA Woman on CD in the late 90s, I thought I knew them. I just didn't realize how brilliant and innovative and just standing on their own they really were, until I went album by album on vinyl, including Absolutely Live, which I've said before is one of the 5 best live albums I've ever heard. But the power of that debut album, which is in the top 10, in my opinion, of the best debut albums in rock history. And I really think you could even go as far as making an argument for it in the top 5, if not even number 1, because it's that strong and it really almost has no business being. That's something I've always loved about. I mean, there's a lot of bands, by the way, that put out their best effort in their debut and then never could follow it up. But bands that have a catalog and that have an evolution and a change to their sound, those bands that also have an impactful debut record when they're so young and almost have no business putting out something that mature, always really stands out to me. And the debut album of the Doors is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Now, is it better than any Beatles record? Yeah, it's better than some Beatles records. It's of that ilk. It's a 5-star record that you must know and or must own. There's no question. But how many Beatles albums is it better than? Right? That's the question. So the Doors' self-titled debut came out in January of 1967. And I think really what I've learned over the past couple of years in deep diving them is the Jimi Hendrix Experience and the Doors, to me, are the 2 best crystallizations of the psychedelic rock movement. Because the psychedelic rock movement, and this is where I got caught up in a trap, it's very gimmicky. I grew up listening to a lot of those one-hit wonder, the Strawberry Alarm Clock, the Status Quo, Pictures of Matchstick Men, like all these, sort of random things. And you're like, okay, it's a gimmick sound genre. It wasn't. The way that the Doors, largely not even using a bass player, just using Ray Manzarek on keys, could put together that blues-based sound and take such experimental turns that they did. It's incredible. And you go back to the debut album in 67, 11 tracks in all. Yeah, you've certainly got the jump out the box radio hits that made them stars and made them important, like Break On Through. No question about that. Like Light My Fire. And by the way, if you haven't actually heard the album version of Light My Fire, which is 7 minutes and 6 seconds and has an incredible solo in it, it might change the way that you think about that song in general, because of how often we've only heard the 3-minute radio version. But the maturity in some of the standout filler tracks, if you will. The best song on this album is the second one, Soul Kitchen. It's just, I mean, you got Alabama Song Whiskey Bar, and then you've got something like The End, which was 11 minutes and 35 seconds, the last track on the album. And it's the kind of the announcement that Jim's also got that side of him too. The dramatic, dangerous poet in him, the boy with the unsolved trauma, right? And the way that is all crystallized and articulated through a debut album is mind-blowing. Jim Morrison was somebody that, if you listen to like David Crosby and all these people that have hated Jim Morrison because he was obnoxious to be around, and you begin to believe that he was possibly overrated until you go track by track, album by album, Joe, and you realize that from the get-go, this guy knew what he was doing. This band was different. And I'm just happy that they put out as many albums as they did before Jim Morrison entered the 27 Club exit that he did right there. Because now to answer your question, all right, the Doors debut record is not better than Abbey Road or Revolver or the White Album or Let It Be. No, it's better than Let It Be. You're right. It's a great album, but not better than those other ones. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, here we go. Final 10 minutes. Big school function tonight. My kid's getting an award. Let's go. But what a week to be a dad. My other son just finished a half second out of being conference champion in the 2 mile when he wasn't seated to be in that spot. I mean, what oh, man, love those kids. I mean, come on. Just being a proud dad is the greatest feeling in the whole world. Come on. All right, let's get through it here. L&W, Prime TRT K1 Uberim versus Tom Aspinall. Yeah, dude, I'm taking Uberim. I just am. I am. You know, it's the things that we still don't know about Tom Aspinall. The ability to go rounds. Will keeping his chin out there finally get him caught? Yeah, you might get caught by an Uberim knee in the clinch and get effed up. And even though UFC Uberim was after the Brock destruction, a lot of hit and miss, because don't forget those fights like the Travis Brown one where he's dominating, but then he leaves the back door open. And then we dealt with late career Uberim who had some highs and lows with the UFC when the drug testing was much more controlled. But Stipe tapped. And even if Stipe didn't tap, the fact that Overeem in that fight held it together and knocked him down and was in a position to put him in that spot, this guy's great and one of the all-time greats. Also one of the all-time great PED abusers, and that version of him would get it done. Thank you. J-Ray B02, my guy, saying John Laurinaitis was dismissed as a defendant in the Janelle Grant lawsuit against VKM. Interesting how that's flown under the radar. So that broke today. And if you didn't know, so the Janelle Grant lawsuit against Vince McMahon brings in a lot of things from sex trafficking to rape to a lot of other disgusting things, defecation in the hair. Sorry, somebody had to say it. And John Laurinaitis was, a culprit, an associate in a lot of those instances in the report, in the lawsuit. And now you've got Johnny Ace essentially trying to trade freedom for documented proof to further indict VKM. That's getting very interesting right here. Something to watch moving forward. Yeah. Anthony Sexanth, thank you for coming in here. Love your skits in BC. Love your skits and bits, BC. Keep it up. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Just trying to make an honest living and be honest with people. Okay. There we go. Sometimes you get a Dale Senior joke in there. All right. Or sometimes we got a 9/11 meme. I'm sorry. I'm trying. All right. From Devin Tuck, is the PF Chang's era finally over? It might be. It might be. It might be. Where have all the good times gone? Everything comes to an end. Everything runs its course. All right. Maybe the move to Texas will keep the fryers going and the Reddit hot, but also that man deserves to just kind of be a family man and live quietly too, right? Oh, you're a truck guy, B? Okay. Oh, you're a baseball guy. No, shout out to the people. Yeah, it might be over. We had a good run though. All right. We had a good run. Thank you. I don't think we win any of those podcast awards without Team Reddit jumping on board and voting for us. All right. Way to go, guys. Kangle Zaya, thank you for your Canadian loonies. How insane would it be if they brought back Francis to versus Tom? Would that be so we talked about that on MK just a couple of days ago. It's a better fight right now. Francis versus Tom is a better fight than John versus Tom. John's existence in these raises the stakes because of the history of him being the greatest of all time and possibly undefeated, right? If we take away the Matt Hamill loss, which we should. So that adds a lot to it from a marketable in stature. But if John double crosses them and screws them, I would love, even, maybe it coincides with PFL either going out of business or starting to sell things, quickly and in an estate sale. But I would love if they were like, okay, we need somebody for Tom to fight to make Tom something. We need Tom to have a chance now to be something. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to call up Francis, who's getting older every day, had some boxing KOs, had the KO to Anthony Joshua in between there. It would involve, though, we got to move Uncle Dana to the side because those grudge matches, I'll always say it. I'll always say it about Vince. Vince, one of the worst humans ever, but he always put the business first for the fans and for the money. And when it's for the money to make the biggest fights for the fans, everybody wins and they're happy. Dana can't get out of his own way with grudges, unlike Vince, who the value of the business and the fans was always first and foremost to him. That's what would need to happen. This would have to be Ari and Hunter going, let's call this guy up. Let's see if we can do this. It's interesting. All right, a couple more on the way out here. And thank you guys for playing today in a quick 2-hour one. Christian L, thank you for sliding in here. Favorite documentary and why? It's going to have to be the last one. So is that 8 or 7? I should know this, right? The coming home one, the last one, the long one. We put that together thinking it might be the last one, kind of knowing what the future was teasing for us, and it profiles a year, which was 2022, that was just incredible. It was a top moment for our brand. I found that out when I went to my accountant this year to do taxes, and I looked at what I made in 2022, and I was like, damn, that was a great year. That documentary, which takes us back to our, to my hometown, to my house here. We go to Luke's house. It just kind of follows us for a whole year, where the documentary used to be, oh, let's go to the studio for a weekend and take the cameras out and see what we can get. Then the documentaries became, well, let's chronicle an entire year in the life. That's the one. Honorable mention number 2, because I think that's my strongest performance in this ridiculous over-the-top comedic setup, because Luke wouldn't play ball. And don't forget about underrated one, Cleveland with Helwani. Cleveland, underrated doc. Thank you very much. All right. Cosmo Kramer, thank you. Bluegrass and blues music are the true American music. Yeah, I'll give you that. Jazz too in a lot of ways, but definitely the pure, that bluegrass / country rock / you bring in the blues. Yeah, that's the crux of it. That's where it all evolves from in so many ways. Thank you, Cosmo. I'm gonna get a music spin-off thing going here. All right, I gotta get my shit together. Finally, we hit that already. Thank you, guys. I gotta go be a dad. Well, thank you, old man Dave Sandine, for dropping in here. Cheers to everybody. Take care of yourselves, guys. I'm not gonna be an angry man in combat sports wise for long. We got to get through these hurdles though, but we got to get our sports back, boxing and MMA, and then WWE and wrestling, if you're on that side too. Less Dana, less TKO, less turkey too. Like, I want big fights. I want fun. I want excitement. I want to be inspired. Let's do it. Okay. Let's get out of this big corporate business window that we're in right now. Check me out Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, Amazon Prime, regular Prime Video. Okay. Check it out. 4 fights on the main card. Mauro Ranallo, Abner Maris, and me. I'll be handling the in-ring interviews. Check that out. Also, MK, 11 a.m. Eastern on Friday. Check it out. Check out. Oh, sorry, Brody Moret. I didn't get to your Remy Ma, Clarissa Shields question. Next time. Thank you very much for playing. Take care of yourselves out there. Be a good dad. All right, be a father to your child. Ed OG and the Bulldogs once sang that on UMTV Raps. All right, I'll never forget that. Thank you. Enough comments. I'm out of here. Maybe we even have an exit outro for you. Enjoy it. It's great.